They're not heartless. They're not emotionally unavailable. They're not cold, distant, or numb for no reason. They're just tired. Tired of giving their soul to people who barely noticed their presence. Tired of screaming in rooms that went silent. Tired of bleeding for people who walked away clean. You see silence, but silence is not emptiness. Silence is what's left behind when screaming never worked. It's not peace. It's the echo of battles no one saw. It's the final language of someone who begged to be heard and was ignored one too many times. Carl Jung once said, "Where love rules, there is no will to power." But what happens when love becomes a weapon, when the very thing meant to heal you is used to control you, confuse you, manipulate you? What happens when the one you trusted with your heart uses it against you? There are people walking around today with smiles on their faces and war zones in their hearts. They wake up every morning with invisible scars, memories they never chose, emotions they never asked for, pain they never deserved. They carry their trauma like a second skin. It's not visible to you, but to them it's heavy, it's exhausting, it's suffocating. This video is not just about pain. It's about understanding the psychology behind the quiet ones, the ones who don't speak, the ones who never complain, the ones who laugh so you never see them cry. This is about the psychology of the bleeding healers, the ones who keep saving others while no one ever saved them. And maybe, just maybe, as we dive deep into their minds, into their silence, into their survival, you'll finally start to understand a part of yourself that no one ever gave words to. Because this isn't just about them, it's about you. Your hidden wounds, your unspoken stories, your quiet breakdowns, your brave smiles. So stay. Don't skip, because what you hear today might finally explain what your heart never knew how to say. This video could give your pain a voice. This video might be the first time you feel seen. Let's begin. Chapter 1. They're not cold. They're just tired of bleeding. You look at them and think they've become cold, distant, emotionless. You think they don't care anymore. But the truth is, they cared too much. They cared until it broke them. What you see as silence was once overflowing expression. What you call walls used to be open doors. But something happened. Something cracked them from the inside. And they've never been the same since. They're not pushing you away because they hate you. They're pulling back because they don't trust their heart to survive another betrayal. They're not avoiding love. They're avoiding the aftermath of it. Because love, when it goes wrong, doesn't just hurt. It haunts. It reprograms the nervous system. It creates a permanent state of hyper-alertness, where even kindness feels suspicious, and even safety feels temporary. Carl Jung once said, "Pain is the currency with which the soul pays for consciousness." And there are souls out there, bro, who've overpaid, who've bled so much emotionally they don't feel like they have anything left to give. The man who keeps everything inside. He wasn't born that way. He once opened up. He once loved loud, trusted deep, believed fully. And that version of him was ripped apart. Now he walks through life with an iron heart and guarded eyes, not because he wants to, but because he has to. The woman who seems emotionally unavailable. Don't judge her distance. She once stayed too long in a place that destroyed her piece by piece. She once gave her loyalty to someone who used it as a weapon. Now she builds walls not to keep people out, but to keep herself safe inside. This isn't coldness. This is survival. This is what it looks like when your soul has had enough. Silence isn't rudeness anymore. It's armor. It's how people protect what's left of their dignity after being emotionally drained by those they love the most. Guardedness isn't ego. It's evidence. Evidence that pain doesn't just visit. It renovates your personality. It turns warmth into calculation. It turns open-heartedness into measured risk. It turns people into ghosts while they're still alive. You might say, she changed. No, she survived. You might say, he's heartless. No, he's hurting in silence. You see, when someone stops talking, it doesn't mean they have nothing to say. It means they've said it all before and it never made a difference. They look distant, but that's what it takes to keep breathing after emotional suffocation. So the next time someone seems emotionally off, don't rush to judge. They might be the strongest person in the room, just tired of proving it. Chapter 2. The armor you mistake for personality. They didn't choose to be this way. That distant tone, that guarded eye contact, that strange emotional detachment you feel when you're around them. You think it's personality, but it's not. It's protection. You think they don't care. No, they care so deeply it scares them. So they hide it. Behind sarcasm, behind bluntness, behind that wall of silence they've perfected over the years. Because life has taught them one brutal truth. When you wear your heart on your sleeve, people will use it as a target. Jung said, when pain isn't processed, it doesn't vanish. It becomes behavior. And that's exactly what happened. They never got a safe space to fall apart. They were never allowed to be weak. So they had to adapt. They had to suppress the screams, bury the tears, and keep going as if nothing happened. But trauma doesn't just go away. It morphs. It hides. It camouflages into actions, reactions, habits, and personalities. They started shutting people out. They stopped explaining how they felt because every time they opened up, they were either ignored, judged, or used. And after a while, your nervous system says, no more. The anger you see, that's not aggression. It's a cry for boundaries. The emotional distance, that's not coldness. It's a desperate attempt to avoid being hurt again. The short answers and eye rolls, that's someone who learned to protect themselves by pushing others away first. They've turned emotional detachment into a full-time lifestyle. Why? Because when you feel everything too deeply for too long, your only chance of survival is to feel nothing. Numbness becomes the only peace. You know, what was once a temporary reaction to pain becomes a long-term coping mechanism. And soon that coping mechanism becomes a false identity. Now people say, she's just rude, he's too proud, she's so cold, he doesn't care. But they're wrong. You're not seeing the full picture. You're seeing the scars, not the stories behind them. You're seeing the symptoms, not the source. You see someone who changed. I see someone who adapted. You see attitude. I see accumulated survival behavior. You see an attitude. I see a wound that never got the chance to speak. And that wound, it's still there, bleeding silently, covered in layers of fake smiles, polite small talk, and calculated distance. They wear their independence like a badge, but deep down they crave connection. They want to be held, understood, and loved for who they are, not who they became to survive. So the next time you meet someone who seems too tough, don't try to break them. Try to understand what broke them. Because beneath that icy personality, there's a soul screaming, will someone ever love me without making me suffer for it? And maybe, just maybe, if you choose to listen instead of judge, you'll realize they were never difficult. They were just hurt. And they got tired of bleeding for people who never brought bandages. Chapter 3. Complexes. The wounds that still speak. You ever wonder why someone snaps over something small? Why a tiny delay in your message triggers a storm of emotion? Why a harmless tone suddenly leads to withdrawal, silence, or emotional chaos? It's not because they're unstable. It's not because they're dramatic. It's because of something Carl Jung called a complex, a powerful emotional structure buried deep inside the psyche, built not from logic, but from pain that was never allowed to heal. Complexes are the emotional ghosts of our past still haunting our present. A child who was constantly rejected, ignored, or made to feel unworthy grows into an adult who lives in constant emotional alert. So when someone replies late or uses a neutral voice or doesn't show warmth for a moment, it feels familiar. It feels like that same old rejection, just wearing a new face. They're not overreacting. Their nervous system is reacting exactly the way it was trained to because the original wound never healed. It just adapted. It got quieter, but it never disappeared. That's what makes emotional trauma so complex. It doesn't scream like physical pain. It whispers. It shows up in overthinking, people-pleasing trust issues, and that aching voice that says, something's wrong even if I don't know what. A complex isn't just a thought. It's a reflex, an involuntary trigger like a scar on the inside of your mind that still burns when touched. You can't always see it, but you feel it every time someone gets a little too close to that scarred emotion. You say they're too sensitive. Nah, their pain just got smarter. It learned to hide in reactions. It became part of their personality. It created a defense system so fast and automatic even they don't realize why they're triggered sometimes. Imagine growing up feeling unloved, unseen, unworthy. Now imagine trying to date, to make friends, to build trust when every small action feels like a possible threat. That's a complex. That's trauma with a memory. That's pain that didn't vanish. It just learned a new language. Overreaction. So when someone reacts too strongly, don't mock them. Don't roll your eyes. Don't call them weak. Because underneath that reaction is a wound screaming, please don't abandon me like they did. Please don't reject me like before. Please don't confirm what I've always feared, that I'm not enough. You're not weak for reacting. Your pain just remembers better than your ego does. That's the power of a complex. It bypasses your logic, your maturity, even your intelligence. It doesn't care how old you are. It only cares how wounded you still are. But here's the truth. Once you become aware of your complexes, you can stop them from hijacking your life. Because when you finally listen to your triggers instead of fighting them, you start healing the parts of you that no one ever asked about. So the next time you feel too much, pause, breathe, and remember, you're not broken. You're just carrying pain that finally wants to speak. Chapter 4. When trust becomes a threat. Trust, such a beautiful word, until it becomes your biggest fear. Until your heart has tasted betrayal so deep that even kindness feels like a setup. Trusting someone after trauma, it's not a sign of softness. It's a war. It's waking up every day and choosing to put down your sword, even when your body still expects an ambush. You see, for someone who's been shattered before, love doesn't feel like comfort anymore. It feels like risk because they remember how it started last time. Warm words, safe touches, soft promises, and then silence, lies, abandonment. The brain doesn't forget pain, especially when it's emotional. Even if the new person is genuine, loyal, and safe, the unconscious mind doesn't care. It doesn't look at the new face. It only remembers the pattern. So the moment things start feeling too good, the alarms start ringing because last time it felt good too. Right before the heartbreak. Right before the soul cracked open and never fully healed. So what happens? They test you. They pull away. Not because they don't want. You don't. But because they want to see, will you stay as when I show you the broken parts? Will you love me when I don't make it easy? They don't push you away because they hate you. They push you away to see if you'll fight for their broken parts. They cancel plans, act cold, say things they don't mean. Why? Because deep down, they're terrified. Terrified of falling again, of trusting again, of being wrong again. They're not playing games. They're watching patterns, watching your tone, your replies, your distance, looking for any sign that this will end like last time. You might think they're overreacting. No, they're remembering because emotional trauma doesn't leave bruises on the body. It leaves blueprints in the soul. And every I love you now echoes like a question. Do you mean it? Or are you just saying it until you leave too? So if you love someone who's been through deep pain, understand this. Their trust is not a door you walk through. It's a wall you climb with patience, with consistency, with actions that match your words. They don't want perfection. They want safety. They want reassurance. Not once, but again and again and again, until their nervous system believes what their heart already wants to. So if they push you away, don't panic. Don't take it personally. It's not rejection. It's fear wearing armor. And if you truly want to love someone who's healing, you have to become more than just a lover. You have to become a safe space, a shelter, a steady presence in a world that's always shifting. Because to someone who's been broken before, love doesn't sound like "I'm here." It sounds like "I'm still here even when it gets hard." Chapter 5. The Persona. A mask that became skin. Some people move through life like warriors, chin up, back straight, smiling. Even when their world is burning, they speak with clarity. They walk like nothing touches them. But let me tell you a painful truth. That's not strength. That's camouflage. That's survival. Carl Jung called it the persona, the mask we wear to face the world. Not because we're fake, but because life taught us that being real is dangerous. Behind every perfect smile, behind every "I'm fine" that sounds too polished, there's a storm silently screaming for someone to just look deeper. Because the more a person has suffered, the more flawless their mask becomes. It's not an act, it's muscle memory. It's how they learn to walk through a world that never gave them the space to break. They don't show emotion. Not because they don't feel it, but because every time they did, they were punished for it, judged, mocked, abandoned. So now they hide behind composure. Because being vulnerable no longer feels like honesty. It feels like exposure. And exposure feels like danger. They became the strong one because no one gave them permission to be weak. They became the funny one because humor was the only thing that didn't scare people away. They became the responsible one because chaos at home made them grow up before their time. And over time, that role, that image, that mascot stopped being something they wore. It became their skin. Now they don't even know where the mask ends, and they begin. And the world applauds it. You're so strong. You're so put together. You never let anything get to you. But inside they're screaming, "I wish someone saw that I'm not okay. I wish I didn't have to wear this mask just to be loved." You say they're too quiet. They never open up. They're too private. But what you don't understand is they used to open up. They used to trust. They used to express their heart, and the world crushed it. Now they protect themselves the only way they know how. Through silence, through control, through the illusion of strength. Their silence isn't arrogance. It's protection from a world that punished them for feeling. So next time you see someone who seems emotionless, don't assume they don't care. Don't call them cold. Ask yourself, what did they survive to become this guarded? Because sometimes the strongest-looking people in the room are the ones who are just really good at hiding their scars. Chapter 6. The Curse of Excessive Empathy. You ever meet someone who feels too much? They walk into a room and can instantly sense who's hurting even behind fake smiles. They notice the shift in tone. They pick up on the smallest change in energy. They carry everyone's burdens like it's second nature. And you might think, wow, what an angel. But the truth is darker than that. They aren't angels. They're wounded souls who never learned how to carry their own pain. So now they carry yours. You see, people who've been hurt deeply don't become colder. They often become softer. So sensitive to suffering that even a stranger's sadness can ruin their entire day. They're the ones checking on everyone else while no one checks on them. They're the ones who stay up late giving advice while silently drowning in emotions they never talk about. And here's the paradox. They become healers not because they've healed, but because they're still bleeding just silently. They've mastered the art of holding others together while they quietly fall apart behind closed doors. They were the kid who never got asked, "Are you okay?" So now they ask it to everyone they meet. They know what emotional neglect feels like, so they become emotional support for others. But that support often comes at the cost of their own mental peace. Empathy becomes a curse when you feel everything, but you don't know how to release anything, so they internalize it. They bottle it. They absorb other people's trauma and carry it like it's their own. You think they're strong? No. They're exhausted. They're the emotional sponge of every room, soaking up pain they didn't cause while hiding pain they never processed. They care too much because once no one cared for them. That's the cycle. That's the hidden origin of excessive empathy. It's not born from peace. It's born from emotional starvation. And over time, that kind of unchecked empathy can become self-destruction in disguise. Because when you keep showing up for everyone but no one shows up for you, you begin to lose sight of your own needs. You begin to think love is only earned by self-sacrifice. So if you're one of those people, the feelers, the fixers, the healers, the overthinkers who cry for others more than yourselves, just know this. You deserve love too. Not just for what you give, but for who you are beneath it all. Empathy is powerful, but unbalanced empathy is a quiet curse. And it's time to start healing the healer. Because you can't pour from an empty cup no matter how deeply you feel. Chapter 7. Love with one foot. Out the door. Love looks different when the heart has been broken more than once. It's not flowers and butterflies. It's not late-night calls and Instagram quotes. It's hesitation. It's overthinking. It's trying to believe in connection again while still carrying the wreckage of the last one. For a wounded soul, love isn't soft and sweet. It's heavy, like holding a glass heart that shattered twice. And now you're afraid it might crack again just by trusting the warmth of someone else's hands. They don't fall in love easily. Even when they feel it, they hesitate. Not because you did anything wrong, but because someone before you broke everything right. They remember it too well. The way love once felt safe. How it started with comfort and ended in confusion. How forever turned into goodbye overnight. So now, even when they care deeply, they love with one foot out the door. Carl Jung once said, "True love begins where projection ends." But projection is what happens when pain hasn't been healed. When the wound is still fresh beneath the surface, when the heart starts seeing the ghost of the past in the face of the present. So now the smallest delay in your text feels like abandonment. A shift in your tone feels like a storm is coming. And your silence feels like the beginning of the end. It's not that they don't love you. They're loving you with everything they have left, but they're also protecting the part of themselves that didn't survive last time. Because the last time they trusted someone, they lost themselves in the process, and they promised never again. They're loving you, but they're also guarding the version of them that was destroyed last time. This love is real, but it's cautious. It's trying to bloom in soil that still remembers drought. They over-apologize. They second-guess themselves. They pull away just to see if you'll chase, not because they want to play games, but because they need to believe they're not alone this time. That this love won't repeat the pain they swore they'd never feel again. And here's what most people miss. They're not afraid of love. They're afraid of what love has done to them before. So they build exits in their heart, little escape plans in case things go wrong. And when you finally get close, they ask themselves, should I trust this? Or is this just another lesson waiting to break me? They want to believe in love. They want to stay. But part of them is always halfway gone just in case you turn out like the rest. And that's the battle. Not between loving you or not, but between choosing hope again. When fear has lived in them for far too long. So if you love someone like this, be gentle, be consistent. Don't try to break their walls. Show them they're safe inside them. Because one day, if they finally feel secure, if they finally stop waiting for the fall, they'll put both feet in. And when they do, you'll have the most fiercely loyal heart you've ever known. Chapter 8. Strength that wasn't a choice. Some people are strong, but not the kind of strength that comes from the gym or from motivational books or from morning routines and discipline. No, their strength was forced. Their strength was built in darkness. Their strength was a response to abandonment, loss, betrayal, and silence. They never had anyone to catch them, so they learned how to fall without breaking. They never had someone to lean on, so they became their own shelter. And they didn't have the luxury of falling apart because if they did, everything around them would have collapsed, too. This strength isn't loud. It doesn't post on Instagram. It doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't wear a cape. It survives. It shows up. It carries pain quietly and smiles so no one has to worry. They became the strong one in everyone's life. The one people call when things fall apart. The one who shows up even when their own world is crumbling. The one who listens, who helps, who fixes. Because they were never allowed to ask for help themselves. But here's the dark side of that kind of strength. Over time, it hardens. It turns into stone. They forget how to ask for help, because every time they did in the past, they were either ignored or punished for it. They forget how to cry because crying once led to shame, blame, or guilt. They forget how to soften because softness cost them too much. And now they walk through life armored in silence. They say, "I'm fine." Even when they're breaking, they say it's nothing. Even when it's everything you think they don't feel. They feel too much. But they've trained themselves to suppress every emotion because vulnerability was never safe. You say they're so strong, but that strength, it came at a price. It cost them connection. It cost them softness. It cost them the ability to fall into someone's arms and say, "I'm not okay." Because no one ever held them when they weren't. They don't break. That's the problem. They've forgotten how. And that kind of strength, it's not a superpower. It's a burden. Because when you always have to be the strong one, you stop knowing how to be human. So the world claps for them. Wow, look how well they're doing. Such a warrior. But no one asks, at what cost? No one sees the tears, they swallow the breakdowns, they silence the nights they stay up holding themselves together because no one else ever did. They've been strong for so long, even love feels foreign. Even comfort feels suspicious. Even softness feels like danger because strength became their only language of survival. And that's the quiet tragedy. They look unshakable. But inside, they're tired. Tired of always being the strong one. Tired of pretending they don't need help. Tired of never getting to rest their soul on someone else's shoulder. So if you meet someone like this, don't worship their strength. See the story behind it. See the child who grew up too fast, the adult who was never allowed to fall apart. And if they ever let you see their weakness, don't look away. Because showing weakness, and for them, is the most courageous act they know. Chapter 9. The Overthinker's Prison. Some people don't live in the moment. They live in their mind. Their body is present, but their thoughts. Running 100-mile. They replay every conversation. What they said, what you didn't say. And even the silence between words becomes a riddle they can't solve. Why? Because feeling has hurt them before. So now thinking feels safer. Thinking is structure. Thinking is control. Overthinking is their last defense against the chaos of emotion. They don't trust peace because the last time they felt peace, it turned into pain overnight. They're not too sensitive. They're just too familiar with how quickly things fall apart. So now they scan everything for danger, even love, even kindness. They'll ask themselves, did I say too much? Did I say too little? Should I have just stayed quiet? Not because they're insecure, but because they've been blamed, ghosted, or misunderstood for things they never meant. Overthinking is not weakness, it's self-preservation. It's how they stay safe when they don't know who to trust. They try to predict the pain before it happens again. They're not indecisive. They're just terrified of making the same mistake again. So if someone overthinks around you, don't mock them. Don't say, just chill. Instead, give them consistency. Give them space. Give them safety. Because when their mind finally rests, their heart will finally come out of hiding. Final chapter. Healing isn't loud, it's subtle. Healing doesn't arrive with trumpets. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't always look like peace and positivity. Sometimes healing is so quiet, even the person healing doesn't notice it at first. Sometimes healing is typing out a message and hitting send instead of deleting it. Letting someone hug you and not pulling away. Telling someone, I need help, without choking on guilt or shame. It's not about forgetting the past. It's about finally no longer bleeding from it. It's about feeling the same trigger but choosing a different response. Healing is messy. It's unlearning. It's painful. It's brave. And no, you don't have to rip your armor off in one day. Just stop kneading it 1 inch at a time. You don't have to rip your armor off, just stop needing it. That's how healing begins. Not by being unbreakable, but by being honest enough to say, I'm not fine, but I'm trying. If you saw yourself in this, if even one chapter felt like someone wrote your silence into words, then don't run from it. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are just a soul remembering who you were before the pain taught you to hide. Now do one thing. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because maybe, just maybe, they're not cold either. They're just tired. Tired of hurting in silence and pretending it's okay. And if no one's told you this lately, you're allowed to heal. You're allowed to be soft again. And you're allowed to outgrow the pain that tried to define you. You made it this far. Don't stop now.